Oh yeah.
Today on Off-Grid Cooking, we're going to be cooking up a New York strip steak. So right now we're letting it come up to room temperature. For a seasoning, we've got Kinder's brown sugar rub. I love sweet, and I had this rub last time. It was delicious. As far as veg, we're going to be sauteing some mushrooms, and I'm going to do a little side of peppers. Because this is off-grid cooking and I do keep most of the main cooking supplies here, instead of butter, we're going to be using beef tallow. So today I'm going to be using a cast iron. We're just using the heat from the actual wood stove itself. No need to waste propane, especially because right now the stove is reading 500. So this will definitely end up being a good temperature for the steak. The steak has been sitting, outside the cooler at room temp for about half an hour or so. I'll cook the steak, then I'll saute the mushrooms while the steak is resting. So the rule of thumb that I'm familiar with is you should let a steak rest for a third of its cook time. So today we've got the New York strip steak. It's roughly, 3/4 to an inch thick. Yeah, probably about an inch thick. So that means I'm at 500 degrees. I'm going to probably do about 2.5 minutes per side. So a 5-minute cook time. So I'd probably let that rest for about 3 minutes or so. 3 minutes would probably be roughly enough time to saute the mushrooms. With the mushrooms, I like to cut them very thick. So these are the white, I don't know what they're called, white large mushrooms or whatever from your general grocery store. One of those, I'll only cut into 4 pieces. So you're talking some thick, beefy little mushroom slices. Because by the time they've sauteed down, I still want them to have some texture. I still want them to have that fleshy texture that they add to the steak. You don't want to season the steak ahead of time because you don't want the salts in the seasoning to draw the water out of the steak. So right now we have the steak resting, coming to room temperature. That's important because it helps the center of the steak be warm even though it's not cooked or cooked well. I like my steaks medium rare to rare. So for an inch thick steak, I'm going to cook that steak for about 2.5 minutes per side and let it rest for about 3 minutes. I'm not going to season the steak until right before I set it on the skillet, and then I'm going to season the other side while it's on there. I'm going to cook the peppers in the fat. Then I'm going to cook the mushrooms while the steak is resting.
Beef tallow, brown sugar.
Now I have a thermometer that's on my stovetop so I can see the temperature. And the way that you adjust the temperature with a wood stove is through the damper, which on this stove is a sliding handle here. What that does is controls how much air gets in and out of the fire. So if you need to heat things up quickly, you open it up, which allows a lot more oxygen and a higher burning temperature. The majority of the time that you're using a wood stove, the purpose is to produce heat to heat the space or the building that you're in. For that purpose, you'll usually keep it closed or slightly open to allow a small amount of oxygen in, because that's the most efficient way to burn the wood, and usually if you're using the proper size of a wood stove, it's going to keep a very comfortable temperature inside. Right now, this is almost a temp. I would like to get it a little bit warmer than where it's at right now. And so I'm going to open about halfway for about 10 minutes or so and just bring the temperature up a bit more. Another tip. Conventional wisdom has us pouring slowly down the side of a glass. Well, the problem with that is if you do that, then all of that gets released in your stomach. That's why you get so bloated and you feel so full when you drink IPAs. You got to let that all out. There's still plenty of carbonation afterwards. Cheers. When you're out doing strenuous activities, don't forget to mix in electrolytes. We're not talking high fructose corn syrup, we're talking electrolytes. But it's got real sugars and salts, and it is the only thing that helped me not cramp when I was doing physical manual labor here in the summertime. All right, we're just above 450 degrees. So now what we're gonna do is season our steak. Again, we don't want to season it earlier because we do not want the salts in the seasoning to draw all the water out of the steak. By waiting till now to season it, we're gonna ensure a juicy steak. Give it a healthy coating every inch. I don't want to even be able to see red. We just want to see seasoning, and we're gonna pat it. We got it coated, and we want to pat, 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 pat. Now we didn't want to add our fat into the cast iron ahead of time because we do not want to burn it out and smoke out the place and do all kinds of craziness. Oh, it's winter. It's harder to get out now, imagine that. I'm going to add a healthy heat because this tallow is going to be the fat that I'm going to cook the steak in. It's going to be the fat that I saute the mushrooms in. I'll probably add a little bit more for that. But I want to go healthy with my tallow. We're going to cook it for 2.5 minutes per side. Once we lay it down, we're going to leave it on that side. Now while that side's cooking, and in order again not to draw more moisture out of the steak than is necessary, we're not going to season it until we've laid that side down. Now we'll go ahead and season the side facing up. Healthy, healthy coating. You cannot over season a steak. Now one consideration to make when you're cooking a steak is if you have the luxury like I do of having one steak and one big skillet, I place the steak down on the right side. That's because when I go to flip the steak, I want to place it on a very hot surface. By leaving this open and absorbing all that heat the entire time without the steak to absorb it, this is going to be the hottest surface in this pan. So when I flip it, that's going to do the best job of searing in the steak. Searing in the exterior does a good job of making it juicy, which you can tell is a common theme of what we're focused on to make a good steak. I'm going to go ahead and flip it now. We've got this side seasoned. We're also climbing in our temperature, so I'm going to close our damper down. I'll probably open it just right, about 1/4 inch out. While our steak finishes on that side, I'm going to add our peppers. We're using sweet peppers and cooking them whole. I'm going to get that char on the exterior, warm it up, but take it out before we lose that crisp crunch. So with our mini sweet peppers, we're going to get a char on the exterior, but rotate them in time to not lose that crispness that we get from biting into them. We'll leave those on while the steak finishes with 2 minutes more to go on this side. When the steak comes out, we'll add our sliced mushrooms and rotate our peppers. All right, we've done 3 minutes aside. We're going to take our steak off and let that rest. You want to let it rest for at least 1/3 of your cook time. So we'll let it rest just for about 3 minutes or so. And then bring our mushrooms in. Oh no, we lost one. Ellie's going to try it, but she's going to hate it because it doesn't go crunch. Yep, she smelled it and she's done. I'm going to add just a little bit more fat. Like many things that you saute, with the veggies you want to keep moving continuously. We're going to also look for any surfaces on our peppers that look like they haven't really been cooked or touched by heat. The bigger items we might move more to the center. The items that look like they might be more well done or cooked, we can go ahead and move to the areas that are cooler. We're about 3 minutes into this. Our steak is properly rested. We probably just need 30 seconds or so more for our mushrooms.
Yum. Aw, yeah. Better believe it.